Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hi, Ed. Hi, Kimberly. Okay, welcome to part 6, all about the short sale process. So I have a PowerPoint for today, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go over just a general overview of the short sale process. And I have some tips for each of those stages of the process for you. So if you have questions, Kimberly, I'm sure you will. I love that you ask questions. I would love to answer them. So feel free to post them in the chat or I will get to them eventually. Okay. Okay, so part 6. This is part 6 of our 8-part series training. So we have 2 sessions left after this. So we'll have part 7 next week, then we'll have part 8. And then we'll take 1 week off because it's my boy's last day of school that day. And then we'll return after that. So I'll go over the schedule a little bit more at the end. But really, we're during the series training kind of taking you through the short sale throughout. Okay, we have touched a little bit on the equity sales as well, but this particular part 6 is going to be about the short sale. Okay, all right, so let's go on. So the first part is short sale process. Now, what do you do after? So last week we talked about getting the offer and explaining it to the seller as well. Now we're going to collect the documentation. So when do I request the documentation and why? And then we'll go over my tip, okay? So typically, I do not collect the documentation up front. Now, every situation is definitely different. So are there times that I take the documentation and the checklist to the sellers at the listing appointment? Yes. Again, every scenario is going to be different, okay? But typically, once we get an offer on the property, then my transaction coordinator will send out, we have template emails for the entire short sale process, okay? I created these templates years ago. They're really great. You just plug in the information and send it. So when we get the short sale offer, one of the short sale tasks in our task list is for Bonnie to send an email of all the documentation that we need, okay? In that email, it will list specifically what their bank is requesting. And if a lot of times we have to attach that, okay? So we attach everything they need to the email. There's a list. And then in that email, we put a deadline, okay? A deadline of when these documents have to be back. I would say generally we give them about a week. Again, it depends on where they're at in the foreclosure process. So we may have to collect that information sooner. So why do we collect it after an offer versus the beginning? So if you collect it at the beginning, we ultimately never know when we're going to get an offer. In this particular market, you're probably going to get an offer pretty quickly. But if it takes a while, which some properties are, then you're just going to have to go back and collect that documentation again. And so I'm all about time and making the best use of my time, the best use of my team's time. So I want to collect all of the most current documentation. And so we do that after we have received an offer, okay? So that's when we request and why. The biggest tip I have for this stage is to review. So review, review. Say that 10 times. So the reason why you need to review, this is not a, it is a need. You have to review all of the documentation that comes back. So everything that you're requesting, take the time to go through, make sure it's all there. For example, bank statements, it's going to be pages 1 of 6. Are all pages there? Even if page 6 is blank, you still have to include it. Then you want to go through and review the hardship letter. Make sure you understand what happened, because it's only going to help you throughout the process. Okay. Then you're going to review the packet. Does it all match up? Is everything there? Maybe there's more expenses that they didn't put on there. So those are the things that you really, really have to review. Do not send a packet to the bank without reviewing it. It is so, so, so crucial. That is something that I'm encouraging you to do at the beginning of your short sale journey. As you review more and more, I then delegated that part out to my TC, my transaction coordinator. She reviews it now. She knows what I look for and how to prepare the packet. But of course, if she has questions, I'm here. So that is collecting the documentation. Are there questions on this part before I move on?
I have a question, of course.
Okay, great.
So would the bank then say there was something the bank didn't like? Would at that point, then they send it back to you and say, we need this corrected?
So they could, but that's really, Kimberly, what we try to avoid, because we want to make the process as smooth as possible. So this is a part of the organization inside of our community. How do you properly collect the documentation? How do you properly prepare the packet so it's clean and concise, which we'll talk about that in the next one. Now, once you do all of that, and it is a really strong packet, the bank could review it and come back and ask for stuff. Yes, they could. And that does happen. But we only send what the requirement is. We don't send any additional documents. So if the bank ends up asking for it, then yeah, we have to give it to them. But our packets are just the general what that bank is asking for. Now, I've dealt with every single bank, so we already have the packets and everything. So we already know what we're going to need to collect. But even though you're submitting that packet, yes, the bank could still ask for more. Hi, Gail. Does that make sense, Kimberly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify too, so I'm sure every bank has a different requirement.
Yes, they do. Okay. So let me just show you that part actually. So our mission inside of our community is to try to make things easy for you. If we're making it easy for you, Kimberly, then it's going to be easy for the homeowner. And that is the ultimate mission, is to create that positive impact in the community. So we don't want you to have to go all over the place looking for these packets. That's crazy, okay? Time is of the essence. So we do have a post with all of the authorizations, with all of the short sale packets. We also have specifics on listing. Now, listing documentation is going to vary no matter where you're at, okay? But it is so, so important to have an indemnity agreement for you. Have I had issues in the past with my short sales? No. Have they been complicated at times? Yes. But you want to protect yourself. And most importantly, you want to, you cannot guarantee relocation assistance. So the indemnity agreement we also have available for you, but we're trying to take the guesswork out. So I will touch also on the lender contact information sheet. If I forget, remind me, Kimberly. But does that answer your question? And do you have any other questions?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So welcome, Gail. And then someone else logged in on their phone. I don't know who that is. Hi, I'm so excited to see you. Okay, so we talked about collecting the documentation, and then we're moving on to, so after you collect the documentation and you have thoroughly reviewed it, then you want to put the packet together, okay? Now, this is where, if you're not organized, that is okay. We'll help you get organized. But you gotta be organized. You gotta be clean and concise with this packet. So we call it an SSOP. So that's just a shortened version of short sale offer packet. Okay. So if you ever decide to join our community, if you see SSOP, that is what I am talking about. I've created all these different things that we've used, like I say equity sale, but it's like essentially a traditional sale, although it's still a foreclosure. So as you attend more of these, you'll understand that. But SSOP means short sale offer packet. So there is a specific way that we prepare this packet. So it's clean, concise, and to the point. So essentially, we have the authorization, we have the listing agreement, we have the listing addendum, we have the MLS sheet. The bank wants to see that it's contingent. Then we go into all of the paperwork that the bank is requesting, and that would include pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns. Now, some packets that the bank has, like for example, PNC already has the 4506T inside of their packet, okay? But if they don't, then we have one available for you in that list, okay? So after you get through all of that, then you're going to include the contract addendum, and you're going to want to either include proof of funds if it's cash or pre-approval if it's financing. And then the very last thing that we include is the HUD or master statement, which is a whole nother training in itself. Preparing a master statement for a short sale is very, very different. So before you send in this packet, you got to make sure that that statement is properly prepared. You would think that if you're an attorney state, the attorneys, even I'm an attorney state, okay? Even after 11, 12 years of working with my attorneys, sometimes they don't come back correctly. Or even with the title companies. If you're a title company state, interview these title companies to make sure they understand short sales. If they don't, pass. It is going to give you a headache if they do not understand short sales, okay? So prepare that clean, concise packet. Fax versus email. So that's where this lender contact sheet comes in, okay? Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so this does get updated quite often. So the last time it was updated was September of 2023. It gets put into our community. So it is basically 5 pages of lender contact, okay? This is going to take the guesswork out for you. You will not have to go and find this information, okay? So you do get access to that. It's just going to make your life easier, okay? So if it gets updated, we put it in the group. So see, it does get updated every, I don't know, 6 months or so, maybe year. It just depends. If we get new data, it gets updated, we put it in there. But that's where it goes back to this point. Well, which one do you use, fax or email? If the lender so sometimes a lender will have a separate fax for an authorization. If they're in bankruptcy, you may have to fax it to a different department. We have all of that information already. But if they have a fax for a short sale offer packet and an email, we will send it to both, okay? The reason why is because, well, you're going to call the banks and say, hey, I submitted a packet. Did you get everything? They're going to tell you no. That is just the reality of short sales, okay? So we always try to send it to both. We use an eFax. So I have rapidfax.com. I'm not even sure. I've had this for like 20 years. So it's eFax now, I think. So I pay like $9 a month. I do not want any of my faxes going to the office. I want them to come directly to my email. Okay. So yes, banks still use fax. So get on board with that. If you don't have your own eFax, get one. It's a write-off, inexpensive. But we also will send an email as well. Okay. And we have templates as far as that goes, like what you should say in your subject line. All very, very important. So the tip for this one is the loan number, okay? So the loan number should be put on the bottom right of every single page, okay? Whether you're faxing or emailing, it doesn't matter. So you all are lucky because you can actually do that inside of an Adobe system. Back in the day when I started, we had to physically write them. And some of these pages, some of these packets were 100 pages. So now you can just type it in and then highlight it, copy, and just paste it on every single page. The reason why you got to put the loan number there is because if those pages get lost, then they can connect it. So if you're not doing that, please do. It's one of my biggest tips. Just do it. I know there's extra time, but remember the whole point is to submit a clean, concise packet to move it along, which is ultimately going to benefit all parties. Okay? Questions on this part? Okay. Let's move on. Follow-up. So after you submit that packet, so we use .loop. We absolutely love .loop. And Gail, I know you and I talked about this yesterday. .loop is great for tasks. Short sales are very task driven. If you didn't know, we have created an entire task list for the short sale process. Makes it easier for you. A part of that task list is to call the lenders. And so when do I call and why? So we typically call twice a week. So again, it's going to depend on where they're at in the process. Maybe I don't have to call twice a week. It is going to vary depending on the situation. But we do try to call twice a week because it allows us to see if anything's missing. One day in this business of short sales is like 10 days, okay? So you really wanna follow up twice a week. I'm encouraging you to do this yourself in the beginning. I did it for many years. I put it on my calendar. It has been the same process since 2007. Do you have a question, Gail?
Yes. So in my standard process, I have a day, 2 days a week that I follow up with my clients. So for example, on Tuesdays, if it's a seller, I'm usually following up on Monday to find out reviews, going over them, anybody that's come through the house or whatever.
Yeah.
And on Fridays, I'm setting up my sellers to make sure they're ready for any sewing over the weekends. Same with buyers. I just kind of follow up with everybody, make sure they're not in. Is there a specific day or time that would be ideal for us to call lenders, or would it matter? It's just as long as it's 2 times a week. That makes sense.
So I have like literally the same process for years.
Okay.
So Monday is like kind of our catch up day and just, make sure we're prepared for the week, go over everything on the weekend. So me personally, I don't do open houses. I don't work on the weekends at all. So that is the great thing about the niche of distressed sales. You can do that. So we typically call on Tuesdays and Fridays, and Bonnie will do it. Bonnie is my transaction coordinator. She will do it first thing in the morning. Of course, every lender is slightly different. So sometimes you can't call first thing in the morning. But that's generally our process. And then on Wednesdays, it is her job to pull all of the auction data. And she preps our weekly auctions, does all of her research. Thursday, she finalizes all that. And then everything goes out on Fridays, every single week. Okay. So,
Thank you. I have a question.
Okay.
So this follow-up that you're referring to, that makes it sound like, and maybe I'm just reading more into this, that you've already established a relationship with the person who's handling your information, or is it just a random call? Do you call up the lender and say, "Oh, I'm Kimberly and I'm handling XYZ. Who do I talk to?"
Yeah, okay, so the lender contact information sheet, it already has the numbers on here that you'll need to call, okay? It's not a
Right.
random number, so you,
Right. But is it a specific person within that organization?
so not, it depends. Again, every scenario is completely different. So there's a number you're gonna call,
Uh-huh.
and it's just, usually you're talking to a random person, okay? Sometimes it's the short sale department, sometimes it's loss mitigation, sometimes it's bankruptcy. Again, it depends on the scenario. You're never going to get the same type. Eventually, you will get assigned to a short sale negotiator, and then you should be able to communicate directly with that person. Now, some banks you'll never talk to that person. Some banks you'll be able to only communicate through email. So again, it varies. Every single lender servicer is completely different. But at the beginning, you're going to be calling that number to get updates on the process. Is anything missing? What's next? And so that leads me to my tip, Kimberly. You want to keep track of all of your conversations for the bank. So for example, we always put the loan number, we always put the phone number and the last 4 digits of their social security number in Google. And then we keep track of all of our conversations inside of Google. We do that for a couple different reasons, because you're never going to get the same person. Okay. You're just not. I guess maybe you could. I have before, but it is rare because we're dealing with a short sale, not an REO. An REO is completely different. But you want to keep track of those conversations, because when you call back the next time, you can refer to that. Or if for some reason you have to file some sort of motion, you have all of that and you can notarize that, hey, this is the conversations that I've had.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so after all of that, let's talk about the BPO and appraisal. So BPO stands for Broker's Price Opinion. Hopefully everyone knows what an appraisal is. Broker's price opinion is done by agents like us, okay? Obviously an appraisal is completed by a certified appraiser. So the difference between those is exactly what I just said. A BPO is not as extensive. 1-2 page report, depending, okay? It is done by a licensed real estate agent, broker. And then the appraisal is it's more extensive. Sometimes it's 20 pages, just really depends, okay? So the timing of that is tricky. So some banks will, once you submit the short sale offer packet, it will trigger them right away to order it, okay? But as you're getting updates, this is something you're going to want to ask. Have you ordered the BPO? Have you ordered the appraisal? Some banks will not order this until the short sale offer packet is complete, which means they have reviewed everything that you have sent in. It is all complete. They have deemed, that's the word they use, deemed. If they have deemed it complete, then they will order the BPO and appraisal, okay? My biggest tip for this is you've got to continue to follow up with the bank, okay? You never know when that BPO or appraisal is going to be ordered. Now, sometimes the bank will order both. Sometimes it's just an appraisal. Sometimes it's just a BPO. Again, it's going to depend on the servicer, okay? So typically, like, for example, FHA, usually both are ordered. However, they don't even like consider the BPO at all. So why they even order it, I have no freaking clue, but they base it on the appraisal, okay? But again, it really depends. So sometimes the BPO and appraisal is ordered at the beginning. Sometimes it's ordered when the packet has been deemed complete. So that's really important, but you want to continue to follow up with the bank. The whole goal, the most important part of the short sale process is this. Okay, so you want to control that. So follow up. Okay. Questions on the BPO and appraisal?
Can you just clarify, Heather? Sorry. So you're saying that they, if I understand you correctly, it's depending on who you're working with, but they're not even going to order the BPO until they make sure that all of the everything that they're requiring paperwork is complete.
Correct. That is that is in one scenario. So
Okay.
it depends on the bank again. Okay. So some banks, so there's two scenarios with the BPO and appraisal. One, as soon as you submit that packet, it triggers them to order it. Okay. I would say that's not as common. The most common one is once the packet is deemed complete, then they will order it.
Okay. And a BPO is a broker price opinion.
Mhm.
It's and can you just like, what do you mean it's an opinion? Opinion of price, opinion of what it's worth?
Yeah, so the BPO and appraisal is essentially for the bank to determine the value. So everyone's always like, oh, they owe this much. It does not matter how much they owe in a short sale. I don't even care. I rarely even ask that. What really matters is the value. What is the bank's, what is the BPO value? What is the appraisal value? They base their counteroffer approval off of these values. Okay. So it is an opinion. It is us, we're brokers, price opinion. So it's their opinion on the price. Now, not every single bank will go off of a BPO. There are some that do, but they mostly base their value off of the appraisal. But for whatever reason, they have to have both on file sometimes, probably for quality control purposes, I'm guessing.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the final thing I have is okay. After that, the value is going to come back. It may take 2+ weeks for that value to go back. Do not get concerned if that happens. The reason why that happens is because it takes time and it does have to go through a quality control process. Okay, so you're either going to get a counter offer from the bank, or the bank will say, yeah, we'll approve it, and then they will start the process of the approval letter. Okay, so let's talk about a counteroffer. FHA is very, very, very tricky. If you come across an FHA short sale and you have never done one, I would say make sure your managed broker or someone understands how to do it, because it is very, very complicated, a lot of moving parts. If you get that, you're going to be totally fine, but FHA requires a net amount of 88%. Now, we probably should do a whole FHA. Actually, I think we may have done one. But you got to make sure in a counteroffer for FHA here in Illinois, once the appraisal comes back, it's like there's no negotiating here because our taxes are so high. We got to meet that net. Because our taxes are so high, it's very difficult for us to meet that net. So what I tell these buyers agents, there ain't no negotiating an FHA short sale here. You're either going to take it or you got to leave it. Fannie Mae and a lot of the other ones, there are going to be a lot more negotiation. So if you're dealing with a Fannie Mae short sale, they are wonderful to deal with. I love them. They'll send a counter offer in their system, and then you can counter back probably a couple of times. Sometimes they may say, nope, this is it. We're not going to counter anymore, but you can play the game a little bit. Okay. So counter offers, like everything else with the short sale, they're going to vary. Okay. All right. So you get the approval letter. Well, what do you do now? Really important to review that. We're actually going to take, we're going to take next week, and I'll tell you what the last two sessions will be, but it will be approval letter and closing. But once you get the approval letter, you do want to ensure that everything is accurate. Put it in your calendar. Okay. That approval letter is going to have a deadline. You must meet that deadline. We'll talk about more of that next week. What happens if you don't meet a deadline? But you got to do it, because otherwise it could open up a can of worms. So we'll talk about that can of worms and why it's important to meet that deadline next week. But my biggest tip for counter offers or this approval letter. So if it's a counter offer and you cannot make it work with that buyer, usually you can that first time around, right? But if you can't, don't get discouraged. Remember, you are the listing agent. Yes, you may be losing out on that buyer, but you're not losing out on the deal. You just put it back on the market as an approved short sale, right? You get another buyer. You don't have to go through the entire process again. So that's if you got a counteroffer and you can't make it work. My biggest tip is it's okay. You'll find another buyer. You'll get it closed. It's just not going to be as soon as you had thought. Okay. And then with the approval letter, my biggest tip is your job is not done. Okay. Just because you have the approval letter, yeah, the hard part is typically done, but you still want to ensure that all parties are meeting these deadlines. The seller's got to be out before that deadline, before you close. Is financing ready to go? So your job is just not done. So get excited about the approval, but you should not be fully excited until you have actually closed on it. Okay. So any questions on the short sale process? Any of the slides that I went over?
I have a question and a kind of I have a comment and a question.
Okay.
You mentioned make sure our brokers know what to do or deal with when coming to a short sale. What kind of questions should I be asking the broker that they should know about that? Yeah, what kind of questions? And then the second thing is more of a comment with regards to Dot Loop. One of the greatest things about Dot Loop, I don't know if everybody's using them on there, but even when you create the task list, you can also put a date to be able to give you a reminder to call those people. So, and it'll come up to you however you designate it to come back to you. So that's a thought.
Yeah, thank you. So we and Dot Loop is really big inside of our community, mainly because I do feel like short sales are task driven. I've created a whole entire task list, so it's there. Okay, Gail. So here's my thing. You're managing broker, and I'm going to try to be as kind as possible, but this is the reality. Managing brokers, 99% of them across the country do not understand short sales. So I'm encouraging you to come to our community because we do get it. Okay. It does not matter where you're at in the United States. An FHA short sale is done the same way. Please do not get yourself in a pickle. You're trying to help this homeowner. They have an FHA. You got to go through the waterfall process. You got to net a certain thing. There's two parts of the approval process. I am pretty darn sure your managing broker is not going to understand that. But if you want to just go and get a giggle, go ask them and say, hey, do you understand how to do an FHA short sale? Could you explain it to me? And if they explain it to you and they start saying, okay, there's two parts of the approval process. Okay, well, can you tell me about that? If they do not know that an ATP is the first part, next, they don't get it. They've never done one. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's 100% truth. They have to go through the waterfall process. What does that mean? What does waterfall mean? That means they are required to go through a loan mod. So my guess is that most they just don't. Like, I've been with my brokerage off and on for like 10 years and they don't understand short sales. And I'm okay with that because when someone inside of my office has a question or even inside of the community, like, I know how to answer that. And I know how to properly help you navigate that with the homeowner because it's so crucial. Like, their lives are at stake here, right? We don't want them to go to foreclosure. So ask Gail, contact me afterwards. I'm curious, but my guess is nope, they're not going to get it. If they do, then okay, they're awesome. But I don't think I've ever come across that, to be honest.
I'd be interested to find out. So now I'm curious because he used to be a real estate lawyer before he was a managing broker. So
and just because they're a lawyer does not mean that it's funny because like even my attorneys on my team, they're just like, no, just please go to Heather. Like, and they let me in full control of everything, which I absolutely love. So yeah, it's just complicated. I mean, if you have that heart and that passion, and we talked, Gail, like, do the right thing and get the proper help and the education. because short sales are always going to be around. They are. And I can show you proof of that. I've done them since 2007. I did them during the pandemic. I did them during all the craziness of the forbearances. They're always there. They will be. They're not going anywhere.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have one. So just to clarify too, when you said you need to continue for this, after you get your approval letter, that it's super important to continue to follow up with all parties. And I understand that, but wouldn't the buyer's agent be kind of keeping them hopefully on target for deadlines? Or is it still my responsibility?
Buyer's agents typically also do not have any clue for a short sale. They might generally, but as for me in my process, we update all parties. So that is something that I tell the agent up front. I want to make sure that their buyer is willing to wait. Okay. Do you understand short sales? If you don't, I'm happy to explain that to you. But we do update all parties. So that includes the buyer's agent. If they want us to include the buyer on our email updates, we can. But you're sending an update typically to buyer's attorney, if there's an attorney, or the buyer's agent. It should be then their responsibility to tell, because obviously you're not talking to the buyer's agent, you're the listing agent.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so our final two. So next Thursday, which is May 8th, we are going to review the approval letter. And then the final part 8, we'll talk about the closing, okay, and some things that you can do. And then the 23rd, we will not be in session because my kids have their last day of school. So that will be a break right after our 8-part series, and then we'll move into some new stuff that is coming up. All right. If you have any questions, I'll stick around for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a blessed weekend, and I will see you for part 7 next week.
Okay, thank you. So that it's interesting. I spoke with my broker yesterday, and he basically said, "Yeah, you go for it."
Well, good. I'm glad that they're encouraging you to go for it, because my experience also with managing brokers, they say, no, don't do it. There's no money. It's too hard. False and false. But I'm glad that he or she has said that. So that's awesome, Kimberly.
Yeah. And I think though, like you're saying, they don't have a lot of knowledge about it.
They don't.
And just on a personal note, Heather, what would you know that I've been back and forth with this, but I almost feel like I'm not ready to jump off the cliff yet. I don't know, because I feel like I don't know enough information. But I know just with anything, if you jump and you'll get the questions answered. I don't know.
So, Kimberly, I know you've been on these sessions. We've met one-on-one, and eventually, you do have to jump outside your comfort zone. And that would be joining our community, because you may think you get great information, but remember, this is just my free group. And I love coming on and trying to get agents excited, because I'm looking for a specific one who have that passion and want to make that impact in these communities, period. If you don't, and it's all about the money for you, it's not going to work, right? So eventually you do have to just, take your little box or your circle and jump outside of that, because if you just do it and you get consistent and organized and you learn the system, it is going to be amazing for you in so many different ways. One, you're going to be very impactful in your community, but also there could be other agents inside of your office that may refer you business because you are the only one that knows how to do that. So I think there's a lot that you probably still have to learn. And you can continue to attend these, but I don't give like the full on details because that's dedicated specifically to the community.
Right, right. Okay. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everyone, have a blessed weekend. See you next week. Bye, Gail.